What's up, everybody? This is D from Brooklyn. Today, I'm just bringing you an update on a little bit of coral growth and some of the positives and negatives that come out of a little bit of coral growth. So, let's take a look at the tank. Now, having an aquarium start to thrive and grow and just show its true colors is really a beautiful thing. But of course, along with that, come a lot of complications. And they're not really complications as more they are just management things that you have to take care of. And that's coral growth, especially with soft corals, hard corals, sometimes not as fast of an issue, but still an issue in the same. It's just a little bit of coral warfare and tank management. And now those of you that have been watching my channel for a while, a few years now, see that this tank, I've had a lot of coral completely grow into this tank. And I've had corals that I've taken out and literally started over again just so that I can have the tank look the way I want it. So let's just take a look at the frog spawn, for instance. Now, frog spawn in some tanks can be an aggressive grower. In some tanks, it could be a really slow grower. But where I have it here, it's grown really thick into this cover. The only thing that's really stopping it is that I have this long extended waving hand zinnia here, which is also another very aggressive grower. Anybody that is starting a tank usually starts with like zoas or Xenia, GSP, which is short for green star polyps, and they are really aggressive growers. So when setting up a tank, you want to keep that in mind and use one of two tools, either the blockout method, which I call the blockout method is because you use two aggressive growers next to each other to control the spread. Now, the blockout method can be a beautiful thing. It can be a aggressive thing because it doesn't always work. Some coral will grow into each other and kill one another until they establish a dominant species in that area. But it's been working pretty good with the frog spawn. This frog spawn actually died back a lot about a year and a half ago when the tank went through a real harsh cycle. This is a very small tank, only really 20 gallons. And in a small system, you will get either quick bad things or quick good things. And playing around with Kalkwasser, playing around with this and that. This is an experiment tank. It just went through a hard cycle, but you could see it grew right back. It's got about maybe five or six heads that grow into the rock and out. But they do what I need them to do, and that's to keep the waving hand from growing this way and coming into the forefront of the tank. So let's look at the other end of that spectrum there. Now here I'm going to try to keep the camera as steady as I can so that you can actually see the extent of what I'm talking about. Now on this side you can see that that same zinnia, while it has this empty area where it doesn't grow down because the frog spawn extends this way, you can see it extends that way and it has that little cave area. It actually reaches way out, at least 4 inches off of the rock, and you can see it getting ready to drop right here. I'll probably go in later and cut that piece out, maybe transplant it to another tank. But what it's trying to do is reestablish itself by dropping one of its own frags into an open area. An area that I currently have populated with basically open egg crate for any possible frags that I bring into the tank, but also my big Redactus mushrooms, which grow completely as a substrate. Let me edge back and you can see what I'm talking about. They're not even on the substrate, they're actually on the glass and completely spread on the glass, reaching across the tank. It's a really pretty thing because when people come over my house, they really think that it's a substrate in this tank, and there is no substrate in the tank. It is just extended corals managing themselves by managing the growth. So what you have to do is really keep that in mind. I have a large, and you can't even tell that, it's about a 5-inch boulder right here. I'm going to take the camera off the tripod so you can see it. If you look under there, you'll see that there is a large stone that I use. And the reason why I use multiple pieces of rock is because if a coral grows in an area where I don't want it to grow, I can remove the whole rock without having to scrape the coral off. Like this is on a glass, this would have to be taken off with a razor. But since there's no substrate and there's all broken up rock, as you can see here, this is a piece of tile, this is all rubble stone. You can see that the mushroom is actually growing toward the glass to attach, but it's attached to the stone. And pardon my glass isn't the cleanest, but just to get you an idea what I'm talking about, you have to manage your tank placement. Now, about 1.5 years ago, this was completely taken over by pulsing zinnia. I mean, the sea of pulsing zinnia was so thick that you could not see the bottom of the tank, and it was really pretty to watch them pulse back and forth. But it's really an aggressive coral, and since I wanted to have SPS in this tank, because this tank was mainly to experiment with the more difficult types of coral that I never had success with, I didn't want to end up with a complete colony of zinnia, which this has actually become, but it's so pretty. I'm really on the crossroads of taking this piece out. This is actually 2 rocks, but I really sit here for hours and watch the spin stream just blow and send it into its waving motion. But with that under consideration, you have to be wary that these will extend and try to drop babies like this. So you have to be ready to cut that coral, do a drastic turn, do a drastic, fragging, and do what you got to do. That's just plain old tank management. The same thing with this Pavona. Pavona, I really love it because I am not a fan of painted rock or purple rock, which I started out with the real Reef rock and it was purple. You love it at first and then you kind of hate it. But I love it because whereas dry rock would get a lot of diatoms, I noticed this rock never showed diatoms. I think because of the surface was infused with the biomedia already, or because just because of the surface of the tank being, the rock rather, the surface of the rock being what it is, I didn't see such a bloom of diatoms when cycling this tank. But the Pavona is another very aggressive grower. You can see it here extending sweepers. I'm trying to get you another shot of those sweepers. As it extends on the rock, it will aggressively spread and then grow out. You can see this growing out like this piece here. This started from a piece the size of a dime, basically the size of this little piece up here. That is what you started that colony with, Mr. D, that right there, and it became this really beautiful extending piece of SPS. Really pretty, really purple, and really easy to manage once your tank is established. But once again, it drops a piece. I'm going to get you a shot. Actually, I thought I saw a piece of my little baby colony there. If I can catch a shot of it for you. There it is. If you can look real close, you'll see that that's actually moving. That's because it has not built up the steady diet of calcium to solidify itself. It extends a soft piece of tissue at such time it is that piece will drop from that tip and fall right onto the egg crate and establish into another colony. Now, I've had that happen many times, and those pieces of rubble rock are there just for that reason. I keep rock down there so I can easily pull that piece off. Here's a piece for you to look at. That was a piece that dropped. I can take that out and give it to a friend, trade it, frag it. $5, $10. You got a new possible colony of coral. But it's really easy thing to do. You just have to have the time to do it and to look at your tank and to manage the growth. Another fine example is these pallies. The pallies are on one rock so small that you can't even see the rock. It's grown right into the egg crate. So that is a problem. As you know, pallizoas can be toxic. They grow into any little small crevice. They actually grow downward and extend out. Zoas do kind of the opposite. They grow out and spread. Well, the pallies grow down like a plant and they root and then shine up. They're really pretty. You can really see how they've contained themselves because I had the mushrooms grow around them, which is the only reason why I actually have the mushrooms in that spot. I may remove some and put another piece there, like a different color palette or something to that extent. I'm really playing with it. But even right here, this is going to have to come out because there's a perfect example of that zinnia, which I really didn't notice, but it has dropped right in between the zoas and the pallies into the egg crate. So I'm going to have to pull that out. I basically use tweezers. I'll show you those in my little cabinet here. Oh no, they're actually on top of the tank here. So use these tweezers. I'll go in there at night when the corals are not open. It's easier to do it at night when they're closed because you can get a better sight of their root, or rather their base, and try to get them out. I got a bright LED that I'll shine on after hours, and I'll just take that out. And what I'll do is, to prevent it from re-sprouting, is I'll put a lot of rock rubble right here in the base to kind of deter it. Even if you leave the smallest piece of tissue, coral can respawn from the smallest piece of tissue. So I'll take that out and I'll just get some rock rubble and establish a little colony of another frag or something over in that corner. My buddy that asked me, hey Don, there's that rock anemone that I bought at Reef, really yellow. You can see how bright yellow and green it is. Completely different color, but it's really pretty, really fluorescent. My daughter always tells me, Dad, you have a thing for green, because I always end up buying a lot of green coral. You know, 5-year pavonas. I always end up with a lot of green coral, but that can also be the way you grow them, the way you feed them, and everything else. Here's a good shot of the pavona. I'm going to actually have to break this tip right here. If you can see this tip right here growing up towards my nice Pasillipora, which has been spreading out nicely, a nice little tree. Here's some new growth at the tip right there. But once again, these corals get really aggressive. I'll take some reef cement and probably protect that encrusting area from the pavona. Pavona will grow right over it. That's the way it takes over. So I'll probably do that. And actually you can see the sweepers there. If I can zoom in, you can see those sweeper tentacles growing right up to the Passillipora's encrusting base and trying to sting for dominance. So we're not going to let that happen. We're going to be good fish parents and manage the colonies. It is a busy thing, and people think, I see a lot of nanos. Nanos have become really, really popular, but with nanos comes a lot of responsibility, because you got a small space and a lot of biodiversity, and you got to be really sharp and stay on top of it. Like I said, I'll put a link in the comments to this tank about a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, where the entire tank was filled from end to end with coral, end to end. So I literally took it out, donated some, just hacked some away and started over. And here's a purple colony. I saw my fish actually sweeping. The clowns were actually sweeping this mushroom. And now I see another little baby. So that wasn't there about a week ago. Little baby mushrooms are also taking over the rock. They're sweeping around, but they're really pretty and really colorful. See how he likes to sleep under it? It's probably why they rub a coral into the direction. You can see them doing it there. There's a perfect example. You think that they're laying eggs. A lot of the time, they feed the coral, they sweep them, they move them. They actually have better tank management than we do. They can actually coerce a coral, an anemone. You can see them in the wild. I've watched a lot of National Geographic films. They can move a coral into the direction that they want it to grow just by rubbing it, like you just saw. So I hope this just gives you guys a heads up, you new tank parents, to just be mindful of what corals. You can't just buy any old coral and throw them together, because they can crash your tank. They can make you just completely want to get out of the hobby. So fish friends, this is D from Brooklyn, keeping my sanity by keeping my tanks, just passing on what I know. None of us are experts. We're always learning. The day I stop learning is the day I'm not in the hobby anymore. So love, peace, and hair grease. I'm going to wrap it up. I'm out. See ya. Manage those tanks and have fun. Do your homework. Do some reading. See ya.